practice, I'm going to put myself in the position of dentist. I'm going to surround myself with $15 to $20 an hour employees who have never run a business before, and they're going to run my business. I'll stay as dentist. 95% or more of my time is going to be in that role. We're going to collect some money. We're going to pay everybody's salary who works here. We'll pay off our bills, and then whatever's left, we'll take home. Right? This is a terrible business plan. Private equity knows this is a terrible business plan. They know it is the norm, and they're saying, hey, well, this is a ripe industry for us to come in and pillage. Let's see where we go. We want the following to happen. We want you to stop thinking that way, because you're a business owner. Business owners got to act like business owners. You can't just assume things are going to always go the same. If you are not forward thinking here, your business is going to get crushed. We want you to know it's waiting for you, and then give you the options on how to get there. We are going to give you this little vocabulary lesson, and by we, I mean Brady. So Brady, give us a little bit here on these terms and why they're important.
So folks, if you want to have your ideal financial future, have your ideal clinical future, and have the lifestyle you want, you need to know these terms. This is how you win the game with private equity and dentistry. EBITDA is just a fancy term for your profit, but it's the way that private equity firms calculate it. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Multiple is the multiplication factor that they use with EBITDA. So if you can increase your EBITDA or understand EBITDA and have a higher multiple, when those two go together, you get a very, very high valuation and, frankly, financial freedom. Term, well, when dentists band together, they can get their terms, right? Autonomy, no golden handcuffs. They can have an incredible 5-year total value. When dentists don't band together, what we've seen is dentists individually get taken advantage of. So knowing the terms is huge. Additionally, when dentists band together, like we're talking about right now on this webinar, generally we are able to negotiate no clawbacks, zero, or a very minimal one. A clawback simply means that, yeah, they'll give you money for your practice, but if you don't perform, if you don't meet certain quotas, if you don't have a certain increase, they'll claw that back from you, which, frankly, about 3 dentists a week, we are helping salvage out of a bad DSO deal. You don't want that. So when you master these 4 terms, it's like hitting a grand slam. Your future is secure, and you get your fair share of all this money pouring into dentistry.
Well done. Essentially being your practice is going to get bought and sold on EBITDA, and you might not know what EBITDA is. It's your net profit, right? Now today, this is a webinar that we put together. Honestly, we put together this idea a year ago, and so some of you might have heard some of our webinars before, so you'll say, hey, there's more than 2 options, there's 3, there's your option. But there's 2 main options today. Number 1, sell to a dentist. Piece of cake. I got $1 million practice. I'm going to sell it for 70% of collections. This dentist pays me $700,000. I pay 10% to a broker, so now I got $630,000. I pay off all my debts, and hopefully I have some money left. This is easy. Dentists are not going to do a lot of due diligence. They're going to look at your tax returns. They're going to literally multiply your number times 0.7, and here's your offer. Quick, simple, easy. You're in. You get paid once. You're out within 6 months. And adios. And the dentists who buy their practice and keep their practice and keep it till they retire, and they do this, all right, typically a young dentist coming in might buy it, except for there's no young dentists looking for practices anymore. So even this idea is starting to go away, and there's just not that many buyers there. But it's quick, fast, and easy. Right? You all have known this forever. You were taught this in dental school probably, and you heard, hey, this is how I buy and sell practices. You probably bought your practice this way. I bought 5 practices. I merged 2 and sold them. So I sold all of them, and every practice I bought or sold was on this formula. That simple, right? Now, why is this going down? Well, here's the amount of dentists who are in private practices. Not so many young people anymore. Why? They're going to corporate. You go to dental school nowadays, and on day 1, you get an email, or sorry, I should say probably an invitation, whether it's through email or text, from the big boys, Heartlands, Pacifics, and Aspens of the world. Said, hey, guess what? Tonight we're going to Topgolf, and we want you there on our dime. Now, I don't know about you. I had no money in dental school, zero. I was living off of very strict budgets. And if somebody offered me a free dinner and drinks, I was going. And if all I had to do was give them my email and text to do so, great. And I'm all of a sudden going to be led from day one of dental school by somebody telling me, you don't want to go own a business. That's not what you want to do. You got to come work for us. You concentrate on what you do. You be the dentist. We'll run the business. Everybody's happy. Brady, talk to us a little bit about selling to a DSO. What is different about selling to a DSO than selling to a dentist?
Yeah, so selling to a DSO, they can oftentimes do it faster, 3 to 6 months. It can take a year to sell to a dentist after you pick through different candidates. Only issue is, hey, you do have what they call the proverbial golden handcuffs, right? You get a little more money, but now you got handcuffs, clawbacks, and frankly, you lost a lot of your freedom, right? Corporate DSOs mandate this, mandate that, have specific rules for your staff, and that's different than an autonomous DSO, which we'll talk about, but this is where the majority of the transactions are going today, selling to a DSO, and frankly, in my own opinion, you might as well just work 3 to 5 years yourself and scrap the practice if you're going to go this route, rather than working for the man, so to speak. So this is slightly more money, but a lot of strings, a lot of baggage.
And by the way, it's slightly more money promised. It's not always slightly more money. Yeah, I could tell you horror stories here. People who thought they were going to get $3 million for a $1 million practice, and they end up getting $700,000. I mean, it's crazy. So there are rules. DSOs do not take everybody. As a matter of fact, they will not even look at your practices. And by the way, this is probably generous. The numbers are probably higher now. They might be looking for 1.5 and above. They might be looking for 2 million and above. All the DSOs are setting the rules. They speak with each other. They know what's out there. They know what the market is. Like, yeah, we don't want these practices. These guys are just going to all disappear, right? Now, there are problems here when you sell to a DSO. Number one, you're committing typically 5 years. It's very rarely 3 years anymore, but typically 5 years. They put you into a non-compete that's usually nationwide. Hey, we want all of you. We don't want you doing anything. You just be the dentist that you are. You let us be the business people that we are. You lose your autonomy, and you do have to be profitable. If you're not profitable right now, they don't want you. So now, when Brady and I used to look at buying dental practices, we wanted the opposite. I wanted somebody who was a mess, because I knew I was going to buy it cheap, and then I knew I could fix it up. DSOs do not want to run your dental practices and turn them into profit machines. They need something that's consistently profitable already. When we talk about an EBITDA margin, that means that is not your overhead, and I will get into that in a sec. That means your profit has to be 20% or greater. Let's talk about it. Right now, if you were to do this, $1 million collection, 60% overhead, what is your EBITDA? Right? EBITDA is your net profit. Now, when we do this live, I can tell you 95% of the audience raises their hand and says, 400,000, it's 400,000, right? It's my overhead, I took home 400, so that's my profit, right? Wrong. Brady, why is that wrong?
Well, they need to accommodate you as a dentist, as someone working in the practice. So you are not included in that overhead, the 60%. So we've got to add that on top of the overhead, and then we have our EBITDA margin on top of that.
Yeah, so essentially, a dentist needs to be paid to do your job, right? So let's say a practice gets sold, and you sell your practice to a DSO. You get to still make money as a dentist. And if it's not you, well, somebody else has to make that money as a dentist. So let's say, in this case, you have a $1 million practice. Dentist salary gets normalized at 30 to 35% of collections. So just to make it simple for this exercise, let's say it's 30%, meaning you're going to get paid $300,000 for being a dentist. That would mean if you have a 60% overhead and then you pay 30% going to doctor salary, there's only $100,000 left, which would leave you with $100,000 of EBITDA, or a 10% EBITDA ratio. And there is not a DSO in this country that is going to buy your practice with a 10% EBITDA ratio, right? Questions are, do you know your current EBITDA? How do I find out my EBITDA? The reality of this one is it's not that simple. First off, there's 20 DSOs, there's 20 calculations. You have to have a good idea of your baseline so you're able to say, that's not my EBITDA, you can't do that to me. As a matter of fact, this system is rigged. How rigged? These letters of intent that go out there, they're really not so cool. You know, so you go ahead and you get a letter of intent and you sign this letter of intent, and the letter of intent says, hey, we're going to agree on an amount. And if everything you say is true, well, we'll pay that amount. But we are going to put your practice through the ringer here. We are going to go into detail and detail and detail and detail, and we're going to start squashing your number down. Oh, and we're going to talk to your employees. Oh, and we got to audit your books. Oh, and we're going to rip your taxes apart. Oh, and all that cash that you took and hid, we're going to find that too. You're not going to get away with anything, essentially, because when you go through a process called quality of earnings, it is a difficult process to go to, and inevitably, your EBITDA is going to be lower than you thought it was, and then you get stuck. Right? We've seen this happen again and again and again, right? It even says here, hey, this letter's not binding and it doesn't mean anything and we have to go through our due diligence, and too bad, because that's the rules, right? And let's say you're a dentist, which you probably are, and you don't know how to pull all your reports from Dentrix or Eaglesoft, which you probably don't. You ask your employee, hey, how can I pull this? And like, hey, who is this person coming in to look at our practice? And what do you mean? If I sign this letter of intent, that means we have a deal in place? It's just very difficult. You know, these are the games that get played with dentists all the time. We see it, don't love it, and trying to make a difference here. When I talk about the typical dental plan, it's like, hey, let's find this practice, it'll do $1 million. We'll go ahead and sell it for 70% if we sell it to a dentist. Maybe a DSO will give us the equivalent of 80 or 85%. And then literally, they take it, put it into their stable of practices, and it's worth 3 or 4 times more. Brady, why is it that that same practice, as soon as they buy it, is worth more?
So your dental practice, like Avi mentioned previously, is worth about 4, 5, or 6 times your EBITDA. When practices are smushed together, put together in what private equity calls integrated, it automatically goes up to about a 13 times multiple, double or triple. So all they need to do is buy your practice at a 4 to 6 times multiple, and immediately it's worth about a 13 times multiple. Once they amass enough practices together, they consistently sell for a 13 times multiple, making huge profits on it. And of course, the dentist thought they were doing okay selling at a 4 to 6 times multiple.
Right, this is a quick little slide, and honestly, just due for time purposes, I'm going to paraphrase this one. This one essentially says the following. Really cool. There's a dentist, and he put his practices together, and he sold it to private equity because private equity seems to have a healthy appetite for dentistry. And it's such a healthy appetite that this dentist took his practices, put them together, and sold it for $40 million. And then private equity comes in and they see, well, 40 million, that's okay. Let's take this and put our systems into play. Let's take it, let's put our management into play, let's take our systems, let's put it into play. And this $40 million investment in 3, 4, 5 years could be worth 3 times, could be worth 4 times, or in this particular case, 25 times the amount that it went for. It went from a $40 million transaction to private equity turning this into a $1 billion company. Heartland, obviously you all know, and I'm certainly not looking to put them down. They've done an amazing thing here to build this monster so big that the biggest of the big private equity groups, KKR, was interested and bought it. And this is, we're talking about billions of dollars for dental practices. You can guess how much of that money ended up with the dentists versus how much of that ended up with the private equity people. You know, as soon as private equity comes into play, it's like 75% of this is ours, and then we'll show you ways where you can earn some of that 25%. It's just kind of crazy. It is the perfect time, by the way. I said there's conglomeration going on here, and this conglomeration typically lasts 3 to 7 years. 3 years from now, this is going to be different. You know? And the problem, by the way, is someone's going to say, well, if I got 3 years, well, let me just wait, let me build myself up, and then I'll sell it. It's a problem. because we've found this to be the case with practices that come into us. Private equity does not buy any practice. They buy the right practices. They buy practices that have their act together. They buy practices that are profitable. They're looking for a 20% margin or greater. And the average practice that has come across Brady and myself for the past year of doing this is 14%. And so it takes sometimes 6, 9, 12 months to get that practice ready to be presented to private equity. So time is of the essence here all. This is how many dentists are becoming employees rather than owners. 70%, pretty staggering, right? There's a term called dry powder. When private equity has money, they need to spend it. Brady and I see this every day because we have so many people that work with us who we're getting incredible deals for because there's dry powder sitting out there. These guys want to buy practices. They want to spend a fortune on it. Why not get your share? Right? I talked about this: buy a practice, grow it, maintain it, sell it when you retire. What is wrong with that plan, Brady? Because it definitely does not work.
So this is exactly what a lot of dentists believe they want to do, and that is grow my practice. When when we're ready to slide back, go to the country club a little more. We'll live our lifestyle then. Unfortunately, you leave most of your money on the table, and that really negatively affects your retirement. So any of you on here right now that have less than $3 million saved in retirement, you need to be listening, because this is really the only pathway right now in dentistry to give you the retirement you thought you were going to get when you first went to dental school. So when the time to sell your dental practice or do a transaction is during your growth phase or plateau phase, well before the regressive phase. And so I would gander, Avi, that's most of the people on this webinar right now.
Very likely. Don't wait. This is the time. We've looked at this now. Brady and I have been working together since September of 21, and we'll get into that in a minute. And too many dentists wait for that decline. It just doesn't make any sense. Don't sell there. And honestly, don't sell to a corporate DSO. And honestly, don't sell for peanuts or to a dentist, and you can make so much more. We created this company, Become the DSO, and when Brady and I first got together, we said, hey, why sell to a DSO when you can become the DSO? We're going to talk about that a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of the history. Brady had a group called the DDSO Alliance. He had 44 practices together. They had $17 million of EBITDA. He was going to go to market in February 2020, and I don't know, something happened in March of 2020 to delay it. I don't remember. It seems like so long ago, right? I think it was something like where there was this fungus that came in and took over everybody's brain, right? I'm obviously making fun of the show The Last of Us, but yeah. Good news is, hey, I also had a group. I was working with International Academy of Sleep, and while they weren't coming to me for, hey, how can I sell my practice? They were looking to open sleep businesses, and they kept saying, hey, I'm getting these offers for my dental practice. What should I do? Brady and I put this together, the two together, and created Freedom Dental Partners. We added over 200 dentists to that original 100 to create a staggering sum of EBITDA. Now, I will tell you, we did have this original plan of putting it all together, selling it to one person or one company. That was not going to happen. There is no DSO in the world that wants to take on that many practices all at once. And again, we had what we would call a partially integrated group, and they wanted a fully integrated group to even get there. Different stories. Basically, what we did is take this group and broke it up into certain tranches and pods, and are sold pods off where dentists are just getting such silly money. It's kind of staggering. And we created another option for them, right? Hey, you can sell to a dentist, you can sell to a DSO, or you can join with us and get higher multiples, freedom to choose cash versus stock, a higher effective net multiple, and that is the biggest and most important term. I promise you're not even thinking about it. And even dentists who we work with don't necessarily understand it. Right? It's like, hey, if I have the possibility of getting an 8x versus a 6x, obviously I should take the 8x, right? No, not always, because there's so many hidden clauses on these things. Every deal is complex. You got to know that, hey, I want my initial multiple to be higher, but I want my effective net multiple to be the highest. right? Unless for some reason you needed every single cent you could have today versus, I could have $1 million today, or I could have $4 million paid to me over 5 years. That makes far more sense to me, right? Hey, do I have to stick around forever? Is there a way for me to replace myself? And do I have control of our terms? This is what we heard from our dentists all the time, and all we said was, let's see, maybe we can create this. Maybe if we band enough people together, we'll have control of our terms. We'll have control of our multiples. We'll have control of how we're paid. We'll have control of what our stock looks like. These are all really important things that I know you've worked on forever, Brady. So give us the biggest pros here to the BTDSO model.
So BTDSO, or become the DSO, really means just that. Instead of us dentists kind of slowly over time transitioning how we may to a dentist or some DSO that you find through a letter that was sent to you in the mail, or one of your buddies referred you. Instead, we come together as a group. And think of it this way. You've heard of co-ops before that end up creating buyers groups. Some of you might be in a buyers group where you get supply discounts, you get lab discounts. It's the same thing, right? Except it's a sellers group. Dentists come together to demand, almost like a union, if you will, to demand way better pricing, which in this case is a multiple of EBITDA, way better terms, which get you a much bigger 5-year payout, but the ability to replace yourself and to have autonomy, which is incredible, to have autonomy where you keep running your staff the way you want to run it, the practice the way you want to run it, except now you have a retirement account full of cash, so you can enjoy your ideal lifestyle. But like Avi said earlier, these times when we can negotiate our deal are numbered, because once it hits about 60% or so of conglomeration, then they just go back and offer you, really frankly, pennies for your practice, and that's just a couple of years in the future here.
Yeah, it's crazy. And listen, this is only possible because dentists are banding together. That is the answer to this. Luckily, we have a lot of dentists in our circle who believe in our message and who believe in us. And today, yeah, I'm with you. Let's get this done, right? Imagine what happens. I took my practice, I gave it to a broker found me a buyer, and then it was like, hey, I'm out of here. Now, the broker literally had nothing to do with it. My attorney, the buyer's attorney, they got together, figured out a deal, and then at closing, just for essentially introducing me, gave 10% to a broker, right? And that doesn't really work. Now here it's like, all right, here's what we're doing. We're taking everyone, we're gathering them together. We're putting these pods together. And rather than selling one practice to a DSO, we're selling groups of practices to a DSO. And this leads to us getting a higher multiple and way more control of our terms. This is not a brokerage. This is we have the ability to get more for you. So it's a comparison that people have called us like, oh, you're charged more than brokers do. And it's like, no, we're not brokers. We're looking to fix your practice up, make it sellable, right? If you give the broker your practice numbers, you're just going to shop them around. We want to take your numbers, put them together, get you the best deal we can, find you the right buyer, someone that's going to meet you. And it's not always about money at all. That is a piece of. Money is a piece of. You don't want to be stuck with the wrong person. You don't want to be stuck with the wrong group. Your life will become hell. We've spoken to dentists who have literally given up $500,000, $1 million or more just to get out of a deal because they were so miserable, right? These are real numbers, by the way. These are real practices that have gone in our deals. This is an actual deal where we have negotiated this out. Hey, here's this practice, 1.567. Yeah, the initial multiple on this, I'm sure, was a 7. But because of what we were able to negotiate out over 5 years, we'll get paid 3 times the value of his practice. Pretty cool. That's one. Here's another one, 2.5 practice. Now this practice, by the way, has multiple interests. This practice, we have to find the right place to put it, right? Not everybody is going to be interested in this one. Now, if you're on here saying, oh, my practice has $600,000 only, we're gonna have to talk. We will be very real with you on everything. You gotta know where you stand today, right? Somebody's got a $2.5 million practice, we're gonna have way more options, probably get you a better deal, probably get you initial higher multiple, certainly be able to negotiate more in terms of cash and stock, and certainly be able to get you a higher overall value. More buyers equals more options equals, let's find a group, put it together, and create a little bidding war. practice like this, the real practice like this, everybody is going to want it. And so now we're really sitting in the driver's seat. Now, how do we take this and combine it with this and combine it with this and find the right buyer? That is what we do. That is what BTDSO is about. Imagine having a $7 million practice and collecting $28 million over a 5-year period. That is what Brady and I like to call the ability to set up transformational, multi-generational wealth. And just really cool. I mean, even if you just got the initial cash value for a $7 million practice, even if you just get 10 million, that's pretty cool. So that being less than half of the total, even cooler. And again, real numbers from real deals that we do. Now, we do want you to do this. We do want you to hear most of this because we got, as I mentioned, exactly an hour. We're 35 minutes in. And you got to understand this in order to do this, right? Part number one, we got to understand who you are and what your practice is about. We have to understand it. Without it, we can't even guide you the right way. So we want you to learn and know what you need to know by coming live. Now, I will tell you this, we do not make money on these seminars. That is not what we are in business for. We are here to find the best deal for you, the best exit strategy for you, the best overall plan for you. We do so by bringing people together live at seminars. We give seminars every 10 weeks. They literally sell out every 10 weeks. We had some cancellations on this one. And because we have cancellations, we decided to do this last second webinar for a course that is 1 week from today. We don't ever do that, but we want to make sure that we can fill up our spots. We haven't had a course that has not sold out yet, so don't make this be the first one. So if you're sitting here on this webinar right now, jump in, become to DSO.com. You can schedule yourself for this event. It is in Dallas. Dallas is one of the easiest places to get to. There's so many flights there. I fly there, frankly, way too much. You know, I would love for these to be in New Jersey, but then Brady would have to travel here. You know, he doesn't like traveling. So in exchange, I get to stay at nice hotels. That's part of the deal. We're going to go through how we took these practices and put them together, how we're bringing them to the market, what you can expect in terms of timeline, and how you can become an owner in this. You know, this is the biggest thing. If you want to join up with DSOs, there's a million games that could be played. I didn't know this when I started in this business a year and a half ago. I know it all today. I could tell you, hey, we got a great deal for you. It's going to be a deal that's a 10x, and you're going to get 70% cash or maybe 60% cash and 40% stock. And you think, oh, this is great. I'm getting a 10x. Well, is that real? Is it a real 10x? Because let's say that is the deal, 60-40. And let's say that stock is something that has no growth potential and you can't sell it. Well, that's not really getting a 10x. That's getting a 10x on 60% of your practice, or the equivalent of probably getting a 6x on the whole of your practice. You got to know this, you got to understand this, and you got to understand yourself, how you can take your practice and have that be a pathway to a really different chapter of your career, one that can lead to literally transformational, multi-generational wealth. Is that going to be the case for everybody here? Obviously not. When people come to us and they have a $250,000 practice, there's not much we could do with it. If you have $750,000 to 1.2 million, there's stuff we can do to get you there. And if you have 1.2 million or above, doesn't mean that we're going to have a deal for you right away. It means that we certainly can work with you to get you to the point where we will have a deal for you. And we're going to talk about that in full so you understand how this can create that transformational, multi-generational wealth. Brady, what am I missing?
So I think you nailed it, Avi, and the reality is we've got some pretty exciting groups of deals going right now. We'd love for you to be a part of them. One of the deals we locked in a letter of intent last year. It's a $340 million deal, $341 million going to dentists in Freedom Dental Partners through Become the DSO. And I tell you what, going to Dallas next week will, as long as you're a candidate, get you into that deal. So very, very exciting times right now. Hey, before our economy falters a little bit more potentially, now's the time to get in and make it happen. Because I'll tell you what, whether it's the economy that worries you, whether you want to slow down and practice someday, maybe you saw your buddy sell to a DSO and you're like, I don't know if I like this or that about it. This seminar is going to give you the ideal clarity about your future. And I can guarantee you this, once you go to this seminar, you will never, ever, ever sell to a corporate DSO. You will only sell to an autonomous DSO. And frankly, you'll only sell for the terms that we open you up to at the seminar. So we'd love to see you there and would love to get you in one of our deals that we have going right now.
Now, Brady is an optimist. I would